and welcome to Auto Today. My name is Dipine and you're joining us for the review of this. This is the Ather 450S. Now this is projected as Ather's more mass market product as opposed to the X. Visually though it is exactly like the X, but it has some major changes under the skin, which includes a slightly less powerful motor, a slightly smaller battery as opposed to the X that we know. Of course now there is an X with a 2.9 kilowatt battery just like this one. But before we jump into our review and tell you how it rides, let me run you through the details of what has changed. Now visually there aren't too many changes between the X and the S, which means they look pretty much identical. In terms of differences between them, of course both ends you get 12-inch tires. The section on the rear tire is slightly less at 90, which is the slimmer tire that's also available on the lower model of the X. The top model of course gets the 110 section tire. The big change though is on the dashboard, where you get a new display, which is a deep view display, as well as new switches, a toggle switch and a dedicated reverse switch. Now the major changes of course are under the skin and are hardware changes. This gets a 2.9 kilowatt hour battery that gives you a range of about 115 kilometers according to ARAI. But real world you're expecting about 90 kilometers of range. The motor is also less powerful at 5.4 kilowatt as compared to the 6.4 kilowatt on the X. It also makes slightly less torque with 22 Nm of torque, and altogether that means it gets from a 0 to 40 time of 3.9 seconds, which is about 0.6 seconds slower than the X. Braking hardware though is the same, with a 190mm disc at the back and a 200mm disc at the front. The big changes though from the X to the S are focused on the battery and the motor. The 450S draws from a 2.9 kilowatt hour battery and uses a less powerful state of tune on the motor, with a peak power output of 7.24 bhp or 5.4 kilowatts and 22 Nm of peak torque. That's down about 1.25 bhp or 1 kilowatt of peak power and 4 Nm of torque from the 450X. This means that the S is slightly slower to the 40 km mark at 3.9 seconds compared to the X, which makes the mark in 3.3. The 450S also tops out at 90 km an hour and misses out on the X's fierce warp mode. On the counter side of that, Ather Energy has also worked on the throttle maps of the S with a scope on their eco and ride modes to make the response from the throttle a little more progressive to suit riders that are just making the switch to electric. Now this is something that you really feel from the saddle, and while we've been riding the 450X for long enough to have overcome the learning curve that is instantaneous throttle response, it will also make the 450 more accessible to a much wider spectrum of riders. The rest of the hardware though remains exactly the same, which means you still get the really sharp turn-ins and the good handling from the 450X. And you also get the 12-inch wheels at both ends, and stopping force comes from a set of disc brakes, 200 mm up front and 190 at the back. The brakes work via a combi system, and brake force is distributed according to which lever is actuated and ensures for confident stops every time. Thank you so much for tuning into our review of the new Ather 450S. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button because it means so much to us. If you haven't already subscribed to the Auto Today channel, this is your chance to do that now. Hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you're notified every time we come out with new automotive content. Now, as far as the 450S goes, this is Ather's competitor for the 125cc performance segment, and this will lead the charge for the electric two-wheelers in that segment. Now, the price is less than the 450X, obviously, at 1.3 lakhs without the FAME subsidies, and for the Pro model it is 1.43 lakhs approximately. Now for the price, it does seem like a little bit of a short sell, but when you consider the value in the long term and just the sheer amount of support that Ather offers its customers in the long term,
I think this scooter has a very strong proposition, especially when it comes to democratizing electric performance two-wheelers.